It's really interesting because I have the same background as Mireille, but also I was surprised to hear what you said about abstract that you tried. It's impossible to decide, okay, today I'm going to do an abstract. Uh, Ironically, this is how I started art school when I was 19, 18. In college, our painting teacher was teaching a particular type. If you know, in the 70s, there was this hard edge. Do you guys are familiar with hard edge, Mondrian? And anyway, so everybody had to paint that way. And I did because at the time it was important to be cutting edge and so I did. But what happened is a few years afterwards, I knew it wasn't me. It wasn't, I may have been in with everybody else, but it wasn't really me. Just like you, Brooks, I just felt that I had to go back to my childhood, and that's where I also went after school, just like Mireille, because we all went through music and ballet and fine art. And I had to relearn it all over again, and I did that on my own because in the 70s, realism and non-representational or representational art was a dirty word. So I had to unlearn everything I did and try to study on my own the classical way. But the trick was to do something not classical, but something that had meaning, and it was contemporary. So, well, you know what I do now. But in terms of how the mosaic artists here with SAMA and CMA, I should tell you that at several SAMA conferences, there were a few kind people who came to me and I had the feeling that they were sorry for me that I spent so many hours working on a mosaic and they said to me, well, why do you have to go through all this? Why don't you do an abstract? It would take you just a few weeks or a few days. And I looked at them and I actually told them that if I were to do an abstract, it would take me just as long, because I don't think that people understand that abstract art is not easy at all. It's very difficult. And amongst all the abstract artists that we know, there are only a few who consistently deliver extraordinary works of art. I'll just name one, and I don't know if you're familiar with her, Rachel Bremen?
Sager?
No. Brennan. Yeah. She's in Australia, I believe. And, Kelly, of course. But particularly Rachel, every single one. I mean, we don't always create masterpieces. We sometimes have better pieces than others. But that lady is just one after another. And I'm always amazed that she can do that. It's very difficult to do an abstract piece. And, I would like to be able to say that I would be able to do it, but I'm not sure. It's not something that attracts me because what I have to say, I could say it through the way I do it, which is representational. But I'd like to believe that I could. Maybe one day I will go back and try it. I don't know. But at the moment, this is how I express myself. So all of you who do good abstract art, wow, my hat off to you. It's not easy. So, yeah.
Thanks, Lily.
Thank you.
Carol, did you want to say anything here at the beginning?
Yeah, I'm also honored to be with these wonderful artists here and sitting with them and discuss this important topic here with you. I always go to seminars or conferences and we always talk about mosaic glass technique, and I think this is very important for everyone to talk about art, like what art is all about, like how we see it, like compositions, colors, light, how things goes together, not only like how the glass is shining with the light. So there's a lot of things that we love to discuss, and I think this will open maybe new discussions for the future for other conferences. So I just want to tell you a little bit about how I do my work. My art is all about everything. I love all mediums. I do watercolors, oils, acrylics, and mosaics. But of course, mosaic is my king. I love glass. But I started with other mediums. And I love also to mix these mediums together. So I do works with watercolor and glass, or acrylics and glass. So I mix everything together, and I like to play around, and that's how I like try to do also bas-relief with my work. So I try to like just discover, like I just want to discover stuff. I want to try stuff. I don't want to be afraid of trying. So I just keep on trying. And when I work, I don't want to think that, oh, you have to do landscape of the ocean because you're close to Laguna. No, I don't want to do that. I want to do what I want to do. This is my passion. I want to draw what I want to draw. And what I feel I want to do it, I will do it. I love figurative art. And I thought I was like drawing before when I was doing oil painting and watercolor. I used to be like, okay, they sorted me as impressionism, not realism. But when it goes to mosaic, when I cut these glass and put them together, I do realism work. So I didn't mean to, but this is how the figurative art goes to. So they see it as realism work. So this transaction or everything I do, I don't think about it. I just feel that I want to do this. And this is what I want to do. This is my passion. So I keep on doing it. I'm not going to change it. But also, I really need everyone to accept my work. Not everyone to accept my work, but I want them to not to exclude me. Like in Sama show, I was maybe the only figurative artist in Tacoma, maybe the only one, or the two. Yeah, you had the birds, and I had my you were in Tacoma too. And Lillian told me, she stood up in front of my piece, and I had a figurative piece, but I had to cut it out and put it like a bas-relief and be crazy about it. And she stood up and she said, maybe because you did this and you were like so crazy about it, that's why they picked you. So I was thinking about it, like maybe, because the whole show was all about abstract. It was really, I like to see variety in the shows, especially like shows like these are international shows once a year for mosaic artists. So I think they should have all the variety of art all over the world. That's it.
Okay, so your turn. Questions? You want to talk to any of these artists, ask them questions about contemporary, representational, those thoughts, those concepts. There's a mic right over here, so we can all hear you. John also has a mic. Let the questions begin. And your questions can be for the whole panel or just for one particular artist. Be clear.
As a person with no art training, I'm curious, to me, some of the work, Brooks and Mireille's bird that was in the last MIA show, are very abstract. They have a figurative element, but I wouldn't say there was anything very figurative about those two pieces about either of your work in certain contexts. And so I'd like somebody to speak to that a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I can say just one little thing. Yeah, that's something that I wanted to mention about my figurative art, that it's going more in the abstract direction, like the bird, where the whole focus is on the movement of the bird and the colors that that movement produces, and then using the gold in there. So if you move in front of it, sometimes you see things, sometimes you don't see them. So it changes all the time. That's walking into an abstract direction, not because I want to be abstract per se, but it's playing with the matter, seeing what it can do for you, being obsessed about all that is going on when a bird moves, or catching the light, making it become light and not a chunk, a block of something. What the stone often does to us is make it very solid and very heavy. I wanted to create that light, so that's why it reminds of an abstract work because I wanted to play with the material and the movement. The one that I'm doing right now at home is a big cloud, a billowing cloud that my husband, he took a picture from the airplane, and I'm trying to catch that translucency, the lightness of the cloud, all the colors going on. So it may well end up as an abstract work, but just because I want to render that light and whatever atmosphere happens around it. So that's what I wanted to.
I guess just one quick comment. I guess I could say my question really is how much figure does it take to make it figurative?
That's a good question. Anytime, if you can discern what it is based on a line that defines it, like if you can tell if it's a bird, then that's
It's a bird.
representational.
Yeah,
It's
it's a bird.
representing something. If there's, and I think that's a really good question that people get confused on is it's representational. Sometimes it's very realism, like with the confound of shades, it looks very realistic. But there's representational versus abstract is if there's a line that defines it as something that you can recognize, then that is representational. If there's no, I mean, you can have lots of lines in your abstract work, but it doesn't, you don't look at it and say that's a bird, you know. I think that's a really good question and something that everybody has to realize what the definitions of those things are.
Yeah,
Sorry if I didn't.
it's a bird.
Probably a good answer, but if you'd used the microphone, it would have been much better.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
next
And not to call her out, but everyone, this is Kate Kerrigan. Yeah.
Sorry.
And can we I want to let Brooks and Lillian just quickly speak to that as well.
I think maybe what you were just saying, there's no bright line between figurative and abstract. There's a shading, I think we all know that. A lot of my work has been experimenting where how much I can take away from a figurative piece and it still be figurative. Especially my later stuff, especially some of my figures, my human figures, where I try to represent them in just 3 or 4 strokes. And it's still figurative, but it's, if I catch the flow of someone's clothes and I try to, especially with opus sectile work, when you're having to cut both sides of it, it's sometimes you want to do as few strokes as possible. And before I would try to get in as much detail as possible because, well, if you saw our house, you would know that I like a cluttered field, visual field, of just as much detail and I think I called it at one point Baroque hippie. But as I've gotten older, I've tried, in some of my newer pieces, I've tried to, like I say, see if I can transmit a feeling of a place or a person or something with 2-3 lines, something like maybe Picasso did on a napkin, or something like
That's
that.
exactly what I was going to say. I was going to mention Picasso and you. So this is for the lady who asked. So first Mireille's work, it's about light, it's about flight and light. So I'll mention the British artist, William Turner. Everybody knows him. He dealt with light and air and so on. So you look at some of his work and you think it's an abstract piece, but in fact, he is still considered to be representational or figurative. Now about you, Brooks, it reminds me of Picasso. What he does, he goes to the essence of a human. He just removes all the unnecessary lines and he gives us the essence and you can fill in with your eyes, but it's still representational. So I think that we have to really discuss the terminology, basically, because is the terminology overlaps certain things. Anyway.
Do we want to use this format? Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
This is a very interesting conversation and very open to this context that is being created in the panel between the idea of art and history. And because my journey was through fine arts, and then when the large-scale public art was being supported by Jerry Brown in California, it was really obvious that he wanted some artifacts that were going to encode our contemporary group. And so he really pumped a lot of resources. So when you think of where mosaic has come from the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th century, those patrons that produced those Byzantine mythological and spiritual icons that were typically religious, and they had this meaning, like we wanted to tell the story of that saint or that mission. So when I looked at mosaic from the context of a fine artist, and I'm very much harvested that, you have your raw visionary over here, who maybe would be abstraction, but would bring figurative in it, and that's a very legitimate place to look. And then you look to history. So I've been to Ravenna, I've been to all the international ports where you can see that the mosaic has survived the ravages of light, water. Some of them even ravaged in war have stood there and represented themselves. So I think it's really interesting that the mosaic artist, the contemporary mosaic artist, is more posturing themselves to a square on the wall, and they're trying to make an entry into the fine arts realm. Because I came through the portal of ceramic, there was the issue of, okay, this is functional.
We need a question, Linda.
Okay, yeah. The functional part of mosaic is that it is architectural surfacing. And it's lasted through the history of time, just like ceramics were pots and vessels. But that group, as this group, wants to be considered as fine artists. And so the sense of what meaning does the figure have, and what meaning does the abstract have? And it's like a switch into the contemporary framework. So what I'm posturing as a question: are you interested in being a fine artist and being in the galleries, or are you more rooted, because of the figurative work, in the history of mosaic? So this is a very poignant period of time, and that's what I'm really trying to find my way in your conversation, where you're trying to go with this. Yeah.
I would say that you can't ignore the past entirely. Probably even the most forward abstract artists can't completely ignore everything that's gone on before. What do you guys think?
I think it's a continuity. Like we are here because of the past, and everything we see and everything we got inspired with. This took us to this part where we are right now. I think it's not working.
Yeah, it's on. It's on.
All right.
Get very close to it.
Okay. We do.
We have one right here.
I was curious, Mireille said that this cloud that she's making, you said, may turn into an abstract. So you don't go into it thinking, I'm going to make an abstract. You're trying to create the light and the movement and the beauty and the life that's in the cloud, but it may just turn into an abstract. So there's that possibility. And then, Kelly, your work, you always have commentary about the emotion that comes from your abstract and the representation of emotion and the flow and the movement and the design and the life that's in your abstract. So it's not really a question, but I see a tremendous overlap. Again, you know.
Yeah, the bird is what inspired me, but some people never saw the bird, so for them it's probably an abstract. It's something colorful that is moving, but to other people it's a bird, and that may happen to the cloud too. For some people it may just be nice colors, and for some people it probably, if I do it well enough, it'll be a cloud. But to me, it inspires me to make this, but when I made the bird, the main thing that I want to express is the determination of the bird that is wanting to fly, the exercise that is needed to train its wings before it will take off, and it's called the art of flying. So it's an emotion that I want to, and of course I want to use the color and the movement and everything to make it pretty, but it's the determination. Yeah. Pat.
I thought what I was hearing a little bit from the panel is what's going on that in juried exhibitions we're seeing more abstract than we're seeing bigger or representative, self-representative. So can you address that? Why is that? And what do we need to do about that so that we can have more balance in our exhibitions? I don't care who says it. No.
It's a good question, and Marie had a great idea about the show of hands for, like, here is a representational sample of people in abstract versus figurative. I still think we need to kind of make sure that we're all kind of using the same terminology to say, well, modern, that's kind of misleading. When it's a call to artists, then maybe we should say, okay, is it, I really want abstract, so let's call it what it is. I think that would probably eliminate a lot of confusion and stuff. And if we could, as if you're curating, if one of you guys is actually curating or putting together a show, then kind of think about like how we're sitting as 50-50 in this sample of people that are abstract and representational. Because mosaic art has, from what I see, you know, and I'm no expert or anything, but even though I'm sitting there, I guess, but thank you. Is that mosaic art has enough challenges without, you know, let's make an abstract versus figurative, you know, fight or the north and south kind of thing going on. I mean, we need to kind of get together and then fight the fight that, hey, mosaic art is a respected art form and should be and has been for thousands of years. You know, so I don't know. I keep going on about it. I'll let somebody go.
Hi, I just want to make a comment that I don't know, maybe you could address this. I admire everyone's work that's sitting up there, and I'm not seeing anyone who's what I would consider a realist in the strong art school sense of the word. And the people that I see that I know do what we will consider to be abstract mosaics, they're really not abstract. If you take it as a whole, on one end you have absolute almost photorealism that's realistic. On the other end, I think the most abstract thing you would have would be something like a color field painting, where it's just like a red square and everyone goes, oh yeah. In between those things, I think is what we see up here, and I think that's fantastic artwork. And I think fantastic artwork is made when people work in a way that's pleasing to them and they find something in the process. Not cutting stone or glass, but you look at the movement of material on an arm, you look at the flight of a bird, you look at humor, and that becomes your intent with your piece. You're showing the strength of an action, something happening that's important to you, and it overrides. Is this abstract? Is this realism? And makes it something better. And I think that's what we need to do.
Even the most abstract of anybody here, one of their pieces, whereas one of my line drawings of a figure is going to remind you of humans and maybe someone you saw in that posture, and it's going to start off a lot of neural synapses that in connotations. Even the most abstract of a piece is just patterns, and it's maybe a white on white, and it's just patterns. It is going to remind you of something in the real world. You cannot keep from it. It's going to remind you of ripples in sand that you saw. It's going to remind you of the way leaves moved and stuff. We all grew up on this planet, and we all, our eyes trained in certain ways and patterns, and it's just what patterns you choose to represent and how few of the lines that you've seen that you want to represent, or how many, how close to photorealism you want to get, which is pretty hard to do.
Okay, we have one more question here, and then we'll go over to you. We're going to start with him, and then I'll bring the microphone to you.
Okay, my question is, how important is the artist's backstory? How the words you use to explain what you're doing to communicate in your work. As you take cultural references out of art, it seems like the people who write about it like to explain that the artist had a troubled background, was a refugee, a relative who died of cancer, and that was the emotional basis of their work, even if it just seems like a piece of chain link fence or a color field. So how important is what you write to get you into a show?
To get you into, okay, that last sentence, to get you into a show, is that what you mean?
Yes. To get you. Yes.
Because that's like a different
So how important
question
is the
than how
statement?
important is it?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, right? How important is the artist statement?
Well, I think more the statement about the piece is what the story.
But it does seem sometimes like the more strange you write, the better it is for an artist.
I know, it's somehow bizarre.
Well, my feeling about artist statements is that that we need to learn how to write them, because our work can say whatever it does on its own, and it should be able to just be on its own. It's art or it's not, you know, it speaks or it doesn't. But what's really great about the artist statement is that it gives a context. It gives the actual context that you were intending when you created the piece. And so what I love to do in galleries is I love to go and sit with a piece, not read the artist statement, sit with it and get my own impression and have my own moment with the piece, and then read the artist statement. And then see if something changes for me, if that informs it more. But I'm kind of selfish. I want my experience with the piece before I read the intent of the artist. May lightning strike, I don't know. But in writing artist statements myself, it was hard. For a long time it was really, really hard. And I love words, but it was still hard to sit down and think through. But it's a skill like any other. It's a practice. It's a learning to think through the intent of what I'm doing, what I did, why I did it, what it meant, what was I thinking about when I did it. Maybe I wasn't thinking about it until it started to happen under my hands. And then I started to see what, as Brooke says, what this reminds me of, oh my gosh, and then I need to do this and this and this and this. And then at the end, I have a narrative. I have some sort of narrative for why I did what I did and what it meant to me or what I was trying to convey. And I see it at the end. Sometimes I go into it with an idea at the beginning, but being able to provide context, and if nothing else, it gives me some sort of framework to think through a process from start to finish, and to actually think about intent. And I'm not a big planner of large drawings and all of that kind of stuff, but I'm a huge thinker. I'm thinking, I'm making connections between what happened to me yesterday and what that was like, and what did that feel like, and what did it mean, and what did it mean to them, and being able to get that mindset of thinking about connections and making them, connecting the dots, and then I can say that, and I find that I understand my work better, and I understand going into the next piece better. I understand if I'm doing a series, I understand that series a lot better, and where I'm going with that series, if I can really think through it and then articulate it. So I know myself better, I know my work better when I'm able to communicate about it. So that kind of weird.
This is basically directed to Brooke.
You do the opus, sectile, sectile, whatever it is, and that's what I do. And you were talking about realism, and that's what I work for, is it to look really, 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 really real. But you're all, almost everybody up there is saying that they're trying to move to the abstract. No?
It's, I don't know, it's just that, like I said, there's no bright line. As some of my pieces, I have tried to make as close to realistic as possible. And I guess that really what that means is a lot of detail. When it just comes down to it, it's a lot of detail. And sometimes the detail enriches a piece and makes it more authentic. I'm not sure. And sometimes it muddies it. And I don't know, it's some sort of strange calculus, strange alchemy that it's hard to express when it's more appropriate to.
But you know, and I went to Santa this year, and I think there were 4.
We need to stick with just solid questions in order to keep on schedule. If you guys want to have a separate conversation later, that would be great.
So one of the things
This will be the last question.
one of the things I heard at least twice is that you guys are running into a bias. And personally, I felt that CMA had gone into a bias towards abstract and turned me off. So is there any way, or what are you trying to do to approach these organizations, and I don't remember the other one, it was in Europe, to say, look guys, you know, we're the cream of the crop here. You know, so Brooks rolls his eye. Well, but we're not, okay, so you're wanting confirmation from us that in fact your bias is true? And have you talked to SAMA? Have you pointed it out to them? Have you, I mean, what do you think needs to happen next to deal with this?
Make it hard. I don't know. I haven't personally written an email. I haven't. I don't know how I would, because I mean the judges change each year,
Okay.
and I don't think they get instructions to say disregard figurative. So I don't really know how we would approach other than continuing to make the best art we can that is that sometimes ends up being representational.